Inside, the lights are low. This isn't your typical lounge. This is where the forgotten tales gather, where the shadows have their say. We'll talk of monsters in the woods, of killers with a motive and lights in the sky, and ghosts in the attic. Come into the waiting room, please.
Tonight we have Michael Kopf. He's a podcaster, paranormal investigator, and now he's an author. He's got a book out. Can you tell us, Michael, about this book?
I'd be glad to. So, this is the first of 4 books in my Awakening series. And we called it the Awakening series because it's a book about me and my experiences and my journey from the beginning to current. And so we hear all the time people talking about, oh, we're coming into this time where we're awakening into this or that, and we're going to be gaining new knowledge. And I thought, well, here I'm writing this series about my life in different aspects in each of the books. And so I was like, well, what do they have in common? They're my awakening. So the first book, and I can show you all. Oh, there it is. Well, hopefully you could see it.
Yeah,
Virtual.
yeah.
It's,
Hold it up again. Hold it up again.
I'm not
Who
sure
did
what.
who did the artwork?
So the artwork was done by my friend Selena Ingles.
It's good.
And so this book I started with is my paranormal journey. So I share my experiences at 2, growing up with shadow beings, how I got started in the paranormal investigating, and places that I've investigated, what my experience there was. And then at the end of the book, I kind of go into where I want to see the paranormal community go and advice for incoming paranormal investigators, and also gave a little bit about what my paranormal podcasting, how it started and what it's evolved into. So I added the podcasting because it's a paranormal show, it's a paranormal book, so I felt like it would be wrong of me to leave it off.
Michael, is this your first book?
It is actually my first book ever written.
Right. So you you became a member of the Hall of Authors.
I have it. Admittingly, it still feels weird to say that.
Okay, so what really got you motivated to actually get this book out there?
So last year, I wrote a book, and it was like 13, 14 chapters long. And I started getting in my brain about who's going to want to read this chapter. Somebody only want to read this chapter. So are they going to buy the book to read everything else, or are they just going to say, eh? So I got in my head and followed some inner wisdom and guidance from guides and everything, and stepped away from it. And then this year, a friend was working on her book, and it got me thinking, I started that book. Feels like an awful lot of shame if I don't finish it and get it out there. And I started looking at it and going, well, this chapter is like a book into itself. Let's just make it a book. Well, so is this chapter. Let's just make that a book. Well, these 3 chapters, they're a book unto themselves. Let's merge those together. And so that's where I broke it into the 4 books. And my intention was, if you know me as paranormal investigator and you're a podcaster or you like to interview people in the paranormal field, here's a book of all my experiences. You could flip through and be like, hey, I want to hear more about this one. So now you have a book to where you can say, hey, in your book, you talk about this. And I can go, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And also, it keeps me from retelling the same experiences over and over on every interview, which I'm sure, Paul, you're familiar with that.
Yeah, but Paul likes doing that.
And Michael, what are some of like the cases that really stand out in your book? So if I pick up your book and I want to read some of your cases, what's going to like really stand out?
Well, what'll stand out is I've done 2 road trips where I went to different states and had different experiences. So I shared them in the book as Paranormal Road Trip 1. I give the year that it happened, where we went to, what happened. And so, like, the first road trip, I was at the Grand Canyon. Well, I got to see the Grand Canyon for the first time and saw this painting where I was told the eyes follow you. So I went on the staircase, looked at the painting, and I went from left to right, away from the painting and towards it. And I swear the eyes in that painting did follow me. And so I had fun doing that, and also had an experience at a school that I shared where a friend had a paranormal experience where I was having a different type experience, so that's shared in the book. And so I also, when I share the experiences and the locations, I tried to add a little bit of how it impacted me and shaped me, because I started to realize after doing all these talks and shows, everybody is happy to say, oh, I went to Yorktown Hospital and investigated. Yeah, we had this, happen. And it's like, and that's it, we're done. And I started thinking, wait a minute. Did that leave an impact on you? Did that affect you somehow? And so those experiences that I had that really impacted me, I share how it impacted me in the book. And so some locations may be like a short paragraph, just kind of like acknowledging I was there. And others may be a little bit longer because of what happened there and what it did in my mind and how it shaped what I was looking at. And I also talk about, equipment, if I use any equipment or if I don't, this is why. And it's like I give a heads up, don't rush to buy everything you see on TV. Play with it first on an investigation, because you may not like it. It may not use it actually ever, and you just spent like $500 on equipment that's going to sit in your trunk. And so I kind of, I was like, it happens, but it was like I kind of gave fair warning of that. And so, yeah, I kind of wanted to give everyone a glimpse into what my paranormal journey has been and how it shaped me from meeting spirits at locations to the afterlife and how that's impacted me. So, and I even included UFOs because I personally have the belief of the paranormal as anything unexplained. So I try to put everything in there that to me was unexplained and fit in the paranormal.
So when I get this book, let's say I get this book, what evidence do you have that ghosts exist? Is there some type of information in your book where I can see that you are a believer that ghosts do exist and you have the proof. Do you have something like that in your book?
So my personal experience, my personal paranormal investigating style isn't relying on data or relying on equipment to validate its personal experience. So, like, an example is I was at a location, Magnolia Bed and Breakfast in Seguin, and I put down where the location is in the book too. So if you want to go, you can. But I had a shirt where I was standing in a doorway and I was in the middle of the doorway. So it's not like my shirt got caught on a nail, on the door frame trim, but I literally felt my shirt pluck. And the two ladies I was with investigating were on the other side of the room. So I share how I was standing in the door frame and I felt my shirt plucked. Now, I don't have it on film and I don't have, an audio recording or anything of that type, but everything I share is something personal that I've experienced. So, and it's my memory of it. And so, do I have scientific data? No, but I don't fake evidence and I don't believe in that. And so, these are my personal experiences. So, if I say something happened, it's what I seen or experienced happen.
Well, I can get that. Um, the one case that I had and was in Citrus Heights. I've been on 2,500 investigations, and that one case made me a believer in the paranormal. Luckily, I had 15 scouts, paranormal investigators in training that actually witnessed the events. And the events, I'll just say it real quick, pounding on the walls. Nobody else was pounding on them. Something out there was pounding on the walls. And then a little girl giggling. Um, Everybody could hear it. There was no little girl at the investigation. And I put my head down on the corner of the bed where this little girl's voice was at. And I put my head down and I go, hello. And she said right back, hello, in front of 15 witnesses. So that was my documentation of the paranormal is real. There's other situations where I did things where I had no witness. You just have to kind of take me for my word, where I'm sitting in a car, windows rolled up, I'm in the cemetery, and I say on my recorder, is there anyone here? I play it back and it says, I'm right behind you, right behind my car. But I mean, I have no witnesses to that. I have no scientific proof. You just have to try and take my word. So basically, what I'm asking is, so if I read your book, is basically your word, or is there like witnesses to the event or anything like that?
There are some witnesses to some of them, but I don't list, like, I don't name who I was with, on every investigation because one, I didn't have permission to use names. And so I didn't want to take the time to hunt down everybody to ask them if it's okay to use your name. So I just shared my experience. And if I did mention someone, I would mention the team name. So if they're not around, they were at that time. And so you can look them up. But I do have witnesses to a lot of stuff. Like one example is I was at a military base and we were in the store and like you were saying, there's this giggle that you hear, this little girl giggle, and this one sounded a little digital, but not really digital. And so this couple from Chicago, and I don't remember their names because I only met them once, said to me, what is this giggling? Where is this doll, that's giggling? And I was like, there are no dolls that giggle. Everything has been turned off. All the animatronics are off. Everything is off for the investigation. And they go, well, we can time it. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so in my mind, I'm like, I was just here last night. There was no giggles. So I'm curious what's going on. And at the same time, I'm like, are these people trying to like prank me or play me and saying, is he going to admit to something that didn't happen? Well, sure enough, all of a sudden the giggle happened and I heard it. And we spent about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours that night trying to find where this giggle was coming from. And we would stand in a circle. We would stand in a straight line. We would stand in corners of the room. We could never get everyone to agree where the sound was coming from. At some points, we were even like, it's coming from the ceiling. And we're like, there's no way it's coming. There's nobody in the ceiling. Nothing's in the ceiling. Then during the middle of the week, I get a call from the owner and she says, we've heard it in a different place. And so I go back with two people that I trust and one of the security guards for the building. And we're walking through and we're like, I know this is a long shot, but we heard this last week. Can we hear it again? And we actually did. And so we couldn't trace down what this sound where it was coming from. We think we found what doll it was, but the doll had no batteries in it, so it shouldn't have been making sound anyway. But that's one of those moments where it's like, one, I couldn't believe it actually repeated and was able to hear it again, same amount of time. But then the odd thing was, those 2 nights were the only nights that I heard it, and they were a week apart. And so I don't, I write about, having the experience of hearing it and not knowing where it comes from. But in this first edition, I didn't want to bog down with details of everything going on because I was like, this is kind of like a glimpse reading of who I am and what I do. And so I started thinking about already, which is kind of funny because I only published one of the 4 books, but I'm looking at next summer actually sitting down and doing like a version 2 to the series of certain books where I'm going to go in and elaborate on the stories, share some more information that I remember, and I may include names of who was there if they're okay with that. But also, I'm looking at adding like illustrations so that you can get a feel for the location because this book is pure text. I didn't put any illustrations in because I didn't know how to do that, and two, I didn't want to spend a fortune, having illustrations in a book and then the book just sits on a shelf somewhere and I'm like, wow, I spent a lot of money that didn't really go anywhere. So this is my
So
beginning.
I'm not going to see any photos of full body apparitions in your book.
Not in the first edition.
Okay. Maybe the second edition.
The second edition, I'm working with an illustrator and we're going to work on how to illustrate the experience if we can of seeing it like, I can't illustrate my shirt being plucked because how do you pluck a shirt without a hand there, and how do you show that on a screen on a picture? So that one may be hard. We're looking at the
But don't you have, like, okay, on your investigations, don't you have investigators that produce evidence in their photos? Like, look at this, I have a full body apparition. Or, look at this, I have this and that. Do you have any photos like that?
I have photos of like strange lights and what I call possible orbs, but full body apparitions I don't, because my luck has always been when I see the apparitions, I don't have camera in hand. My phone is in my pocket because I'm doing something to help someone. And so it's like, it's that proverbial, man, why didn't I have my camera in my hand to film this moment?
Yeah. Yeah, because like in my book, I have a picture where I have two investigators. I took the photo, two investigators, and right behind them is a demon. You can actually see the shadow of the head, and you can see two eyes and everything else. I just lucked out, and I got that.
Well, and reason we're also wanting to hand draw and illustrate is I don't want someone to, because I took a picture, let's say the front of a building, and then somebody else comes and says, "Oh, you took my photo and you're using my photo," and I had to prove it's my photo. So I wanted to avoid copywriting and anyone saying, "Oh, you took my intellectual property." So in the second book, when I do images, my illustrator and I both were saying, yeah, we'll take a picture that you have of something, but we'll tweak it so that nobody can make claim to it. And when I say tweak it, I don't mean adding AI. I have nothing against AI, but I want it to stay true to my, memory and my experience, and not making it something much bigger than it was. And it's like everyone's like, "Oh my God, how did you not see that?" And it's like, because it wasn't there. That's not what it was. And so that's where we're going to be doing that. And like one example is I have a photo that I shared with another investigator at Yorktown Memorial Hospital, to where there's a tree in front of a window, but there's these two, they look like eyes, and they look spaced right for eyes. And it looks like a creature looking into this window. But at the same time, there is a road that goes off that way. And so I'm still working on trying to get photos of cars when they go by to go, was it the brake lights of a car, or was it really red eyes looking at me? Because I don't want to put evidence out that's not evidence. So I'm trying to be also careful of that, of putting out what I can definitively say is something and not possibly something else.
And illustrations always catches the eye. I mean, if you got Yorktown Memorial Hospital and you're talking about it, I want to see a picture of it. I want to see what it looks like, so that's kind of important.
It is. And to be honest, when I was putting the book out, is like I had planned to work on it, and then time flew by and I ended up on a road trip, and then I ended up at a conference, and then I was like, ooh, a friend approached me and she's like, "Hey, I'm available to work on this now before school starts. Do we want to get this done?" And I was like, "Ooh, yeah, let's, at least get book version 1 out." And so that's why second edition, I'm going to spend more time on developing it. And I'm also going to do something rather interesting on the paranormal edition that just came out. The second version is I'm going to sit down with my mom and get her accounts of stuff that happened with her and my dad before I was born that were paranormal, and add those to these books because my dad always wanted to write a book, and he put pen to paper but never put it on computer, so I don't know where his notes went to, but he never got to publish his book. He passed away in June 2023. So my thought was I could take and put his story into my story and say, talk about an origin story. Here is, paranormal experiences my parents had before I was born. So when I say I was born into the paranormal, here are experiences before I was born. And it's like, yeah, I literally was born into the paranormal. My parents were experiencing it before I was born. And it's also a way of having his story, or at least part of his story, put into concrete almost to where, it's forever going to be there. So it's like my way of tribute and leaving a legacy, his legacy, a little mark of it. And so I'm going to be working with her on that. And I'm hoping version 2 may be out next year, or it may take longer with everything I'm wanting to do. So I'm just kind of looking at, one, how popular are the books going to be, and which ones I'll expand on, and which ones are people just like, okay, this is cool, and be like, well, I'll just add illustrations if there's needed.
Hey, Michael, Phil's an author. He probably has some questions for you. Zandine's sitting over there looking like he has some questions for you too. So I'm going to pass the torch over to Phil and Zandine.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm good.
Just curious, what kind of
You're on mute, Phil.
I can hear him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. As long as you can hear me, that's fine. Just wonder what motive, what kind of possesses you? That's an interesting word to use in this, but what possesses you to do this? What drives you to go out there and investigate paranormal hauntings of the what why do you choose certain places? What gets you going in this type of thing?
What helps me to choose places is I look to see what the claims are there and what the stories are. If it's like, oh, someone gets pushed a lot, I'm like, well, I don't know if I can give credence to that a lot. So I may be like, if that's all that, they say happens, I may not go there because that's so hard to get, you know, reoccurrence of. But if there's like stories of footprints and disembodied voices and children laughing, or, there's a list of things, I'm like, hey, I can go there and at least capture one of these, hopefully, and get one of those tonight. So there's more of a shot. And I also look to see, is this a location that's been done a lot? Because if it's been done a lot, it's more I go there just to say, yeah, I've been there. Where if it's a location that I've never heard of, I'm like, ooh, I want to go, hear the history. I want to go hear what the story is and hopefully be able to relay that, and that's some of what I'm looking at doing with the book too, is looking to see if the story is coming through, and if it's not in the first book, in the second version, kind of adding more of the history to it to kind of make sense of trying to preserve the history and preserve these people's names and what they've done, and if there is a spirit there, you know, what is their story, and try and relay it, and how did they relay it. And another thing is, if I go to a location and they're like, oh, we have footsteps and we have, you know, women get pushed and or this, and I go, well, this is what I had happened to me. My hope is that in the book, you know, somebody reads that and goes, well, you know, that happened to me, and comes forward and says, yeah, I had that experience too. And so it gets more awareness and doesn't get discounted by people. And so, yeah, I mean, really, bottom line is I go to one, preserve the history and tell the story, and two is just to see what will happen, and if anything happens, and you know, just what the energy feels like there.
We've got about 7.5 minutes before this first half of the podcast is going to stop, and then we're going to take about a 10 minutes break, and I'll send another link, and then we'll kick off the second half. I want to give Zandine a chance to get a question in before we take that break. So go ahead and take it away, Zandine.
Hey, nice to talk to you, brother.
Nice
I want to
talk to
ask
you.
you, yeah, I really like that you're, publishing, just getting up and doing your journey, like not just, keeping it to yourself. You like felt it was important enough or, compelling enough to get up there and do it. So I mean, that's solid. I was gonna say to you, man, what's your experience with UFOs?
So my experience with UFOs has been where, as and I tell it in the book, just as I tell it like I am now, is my one of them was I was at work for this company, and I finished the work outside of this location, and I looked up and I saw this object just hovering in the sky, and so I was like, well, that's interesting. So I go, okay, well, I need to pack up because I need to leave. And so I put all my stuff together, go inside, check out of this location, and come out. The object is in the same place in the sky. And my first thought is, okay, planes, you know, they circle, they don't just stay still. And this isn't the helicopter because there's no rotary blades on it. And so I'm like, this is interesting. And I'm not hearing it, but I'm like, my mind is still like, well, maybe it's not what I think it is. So I take my stuff to the car and I put it in the car, and I look up, and sure enough, it's still there. And so I take a photo of it, and I'm looking at the photo, and I put it on Facebook, which admittedly now I'm like kind of like, why did I do that? Because everybody just went nuts on it, and I was like, I was just asking a question. But what I found interesting was there were street lights that you could see because it was over a highway, and it was dusk, and you could see the faint outline of the trees, and this object was just slightly above the tree line, and it never made a sound. And we all know from experience, when you're even in heavy traffic, when a plane goes over, you hear it. There is no sound around that can muffle the sound of a passenger jet flying over you. And so I just said, you know, I don't know what this object is. And so I called it a UFO, unidentified flying object. I couldn't see it. And when I zoomed in, it looked like a box with like a thing sticking up, no wings.
Nice. I like
And
that.
so I was like, yeah, and that's one of them. And another one was I had walked outside, and something said, look up. And I look up, and there's one cloud only in the sky. And there's like a yellowish light and an orangish reddish light. And my mind's looking at it as they're going like this. And I'm like, that looks like impacts, like a laser hitting a shield, like I've seen on TV. And I'm like, I think this is a battle. And so I go in and I say to my mom, I go, hey, you want to see this UFO deal going on outside? I don't know what's going on. And she comes out and we both look up and it's like, there's no sound.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, no impact sounds. And then I laughingly find myself as I like retell the story. It's like, I remember thinking, my God, this is over my house. If this is indeed a UFO battle, please disintegrate whatever is falling towards the planet, because I do not think insurance will cover a UFO hitting my house.
It was some real activity. I can see it was like something really going on. You know what?
And I looked up ball lightning because a lot of people are like, oh, I think you saw ball lightning.
Yeah.
And all the pictures I seen online of ball lightning looked nothing like what I saw.
You know, that's what I was going to say to you about it. I was going to say to you, the paranormal and UFOs, it's like, it's two things. Well, number one, it's like Kung Fu on TV. And what I mean by that is like, you see it on TV, you know, you see guys fight like that. But if you try to use what you learn for real, like if anybody's been to a real dojo and knows a real martial art, they know you have to make it work. It's not like the TV where everything is nice and neat, because they do that so you can follow with your eyes. But like real-time paranormal is different from TV stuff too. You know, like you can't always validate, you know, with equipment that, by the way.
Hey, everybody, listen, we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Michael, what we're going to do is send you a second link. We're going to take a 10-minute break. And we have 2 minutes left. And it's kind of interesting because the Paranormal Soul Brother and Phil, I cannot hear them speak. I can hear Michael speak, but I cannot hear Zandine or Phil speak. I don't understand what's going on. It's not normal. I wouldn't say it's paranormal, but
I just think Phil doesn't want to hear us talk tonight. I think it's selective.
And I can't hear Phil.
Ghost in the machine.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just grateful I can hear all three of you. So
we need to take the
at least you can.
Zandine, this is a good opportunity for us to talk some smack right now, since Paul's game.
Maybe the second link I'll be able to hear Phil and Zandine. I don't know. Michael, yeah, I can definitely hear you.
This on the show. You'll see this on the show, what we're saying about you.
It's all fun in the live shows.
That's but it's like Kung Fu. Nobody believes you. Yeah, I mean, you have to see it, you know.
We got 46 seconds.
You know what it really means.
10-minute break. You know? You'll get a second link, and boom, we're back on.
Bro, you know what you did to dance for 72 days or whatever you did. It had something to do with drugs. It wasn't natural.
Had to be gotta make the cut. Oh shit! Hey, Guinness Book of World Records for real.
He's in Guinness for that.
20 seconds.
He swears it wasn't enhanced.
He said it wasn't enhanced.
He said it wasn't enhanced.
We gotta talk about that.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
come on,
2, 1.
All right, and we're back.
Yay, I can hear everybody. I can hear Phil. I can hear Paranormal Soul Brother, but I can't hear Michael Kopf. No, I'm
here.
Mike is here.
Michael, who's your publisher?
So I'm self-published through Amazon.
You're self-published?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a self-publisher too. So yeah. And I'm very happy with it. I'm happy with Lulu and everything else. So,
hey, Mike, Paul gets his money on. You got to talk to him after after the show, man. He's got ways, man. He's richer than all of us, man. He's got that money coming in. So you want to talk to this guy. He don't mess around, but it's a lot of work though. But no, Michael, seriously, I was talking about. I was making an analogy of like a bad analogy of Kung Fu. I'm just saying people don't realize when you do the real paranormal and you try to tell them about a UFO photo or if you tell them about a ghost story, it's coming down to AI is around. no matter what you show them, people can find ways to, like, if you put something on Reddit, you'll have a scientist that will come out and tell you, even if you saw a ghost right in your face, he'll tell you it's this, it's that, it's electrical field. What you saw was a moth getting electrocuted. Yeah, anything can be said in this day and age. But the other thing is, like, if you look at Göbekli Tepe, those things, those ruins that were found 7,000 years before the pyramids, they have, at first when they looked at them, they said, we don't know what they're for or what people are doing. But now they found that people live next to them, Göbekli Tepe, and the significance of that is that that society crashed and burned. They got all the technology, they knew everything, and then they crashed and burned. But stuff like ghost, electricity, everything we're thinking of, people have already come across and discovered, I feel. And but what do you think about that, man? Do you think that people really believe your photos or your stories? What are you feeling about that?
Well, at first I was like, I really want people to believe me and believe what I've seen and everything. And
Yeah.
then I realized, why do I need people to believe that what I experienced is what I experienced? And am I really sharing it for them or for me? And so that's what I was partly doing in the year between writing the book and then breaking into the 4 parts. Was when I broke it into the 4 parts, I was like, now I just want to tell my story and my experiences. And if you believe them, great. If you don't, hey, I appreciate you reading them. And,
Yeah.
at least
That's
you read them. And so I
you know what?
appreciate that.
Not to interrupt you, I want you to keep going. I just want to say the beautiful thing I was thinking, I thought about when you were saying that was that, AI, people are listening to the YouTube right now, or TikTok, or any of them, of stories that are made up, that are AI inflected. So they definitely will listen to a person that is telling their real story. And, they'll listen to that just like anything else. Because, like I said, people are listening to made up stories, right, Paul?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're listening to fiction and liking it. So why not tune into, Michael Kopf with some real stories and, listen to it. And you seem, genuine. You don't seem, you seem transparent. You don't seem like you have a bone to pick, So,
Well, and what I think what sets it apart is the reason I wrote it the way I wrote it as well is for myself is every time I tell the story, it's 99% identical. There may be a little bit differences because of what I remember that moment, but the base of it is all the same. So when you're reading the book, if you've seen me on a podcast or you've watched me on an interview, you're going to go, oh, yeah, I remember him telling this story. And you may get more out of it in this version than a different version. And so it was my way of showing everyone as well, saying, yeah, none of this is AI written, because everything that I've shared, I can tell you verbatim what's in the book, what that experience was, and spit it out almost identical to the book. And if I wrote it in AI, I couldn't do that because those aren't my words. Those aren't my experience. And so that's why I made a point of, when I was writing the description of the book for like Amazon, was to say there is no AI used on this book. And it's not that I have a beef with AI. AI has its purposes. I just wanted everyone to know what they're reading is my words, my experience, and I can tell you verbatim what's in it because it is my truth. And so, yeah, and so that's why I wrote it, is to get my truth out there. And maybe like Paul's generation, helped influence my generation of investigating. And maybe, you know, a future investigator picks up my book and is like, hey, you know, look at all these experiences he had. None of them are identical. None of them are like, oh, I could go and duplicate this by using this method. I even talk about how I tried to disprove one of my experiences. And it's like, yeah, you know, and so that was my goal, was one, to tell my story and my truth, and two is hopefully somebody else picks up the book and says, hey, let's go to this location and let's see if we can prove what he was trying to prove there, or that his experience did happen. And if it does, great. And if not, it's still my experience.
You know, I tell my investigators that we're going to have transparency. And at every investigation, I write an article. Like Zandine, he's one of my investigators, so he's in a lot of my articles and in a lot of my books. Their names go into the book, and they know that from Jump Street. So there's no, oh, Paul, you published my name. I didn't give you permission. Fuck that. But if you're going to my investigation, your name will be in the freaking article. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, but
Man,
as far
I
as
can
what you said
respect that.
yeah, what you said about as far as, you know, being real and believing it. I mean, like I said, it really still
Okay,
comes
here's
down to,
Zandine.
you know, even before they had the books. I mean, you know, before this modern, I say 2020, 2019.
Michael, can you hear Zandine?
I can.
People like Whitley Strieber, people like Whitley Strieber, who any of the popular writers, you know, that used to be on Art Bell's show, any of those guys, or Philip Kopf, who wrote Contact Has Begun. There are different books that were so good, but there was no real proof. I mean, even Zachariah Ascension or somebody like Alan J. Hynek, who had tons of UFO empirical data, tons of cases, or Robert John Mack, who died, you still are left having to make a choice whether you believe it or not. I don't care what they put forward. So if you have an interesting story and you're taking time to publish and put it out there, then that's cool. You know, that's how we can see it, you know, and just judge for ourselves.
Well, and one thing I will share about that is I just had a guest on my show on Sunday, and his website is Debunk My Story, I think is his website. But it's all about, he says, I'm putting this information out, prove me wrong. And so I think in the back of my mind, as I was doing this book and sharing my experiences, was, you know, if you can prove every one of my experiences wrong, kudos to you. But if you can not only prove me wrong, but change my mind about it, that's good. That's great, because that is something I really enjoy, is when people come up to you and say, oh, well, you know, what you experienced was this, and it's actually, you know, this is how it happens. And it's like, huh. So now the next time I have that experience, I'm thinking about that person and what they said, because how they approached me. Now, if they approach me and are going, oh, you're full of crap, you know, lied about this, and this, because this never happened. And I'm like, you know what? You may have the greatest information and the greatest evidence about it, but I will tell you, from the way you approached me, it's going in this year, out this year, and I will remember none of it, because I'll just be sitting there going, this person was arrogant, was a jerk, and I'm not going to give any attention to them.
And you know what? I tell them, hey, you may be right, but if you're that good, I'm sure you have the ability to break it down for me. So let me hear what you have to say. And then, you know, they're like, let me hear, you know, whatever. Yeah. But I get you, man. It's like, whatever. But the difference in what you're saying and just, putting an opinion out there is you actually went and took the time to publish, like, so, that's putting your money where your mouth is.
Right. It's like I have to now stand behind what I wrote, and I can't because it's my words, my story. The only thing that might be a little different in the wording is Selena, who did my cover, also edited the book, so grammar, not my strong suit. So if it doesn't sound like I normally would talk, it's probably because she helps me put it into proper grammar.
Paul, what do you do for that? Or Phil, do you guys use like AI to grammar correct? You do it yourself? Phil's really smart. He probably does it himself. And Paul probably does too, because I could hear Paul's voice in his writing. But do you guys use any aids at all?
Now, on my first book, I had my ex-wife, my third ex-wife, do it because she was a technical writer editor for the government. But then I didn't like the way she did it, so I went over it and redid it myself. And then the second book, I did it myself. It's just about making it readable. You want something to be readable. You don't want to be you don't want to use the same word too many times. I've always been an avid reader, and so making things if it doesn't read right to me, if it doesn't engage me, if it doesn't sound right, and
Yeah.
then to me that's a real easy thing. The thing I found hardest was the first book, because I didn't use AI on either book. I hired an artist to do the artwork for me, and unfortunately, Jason Dubé, who did a great job on the artwork, he didn't really help me out as far as like finding the right place to put the story. That was almost like an afterthought for him, or I really could have used more help with that. And so trying to fit the story in with the artwork, that seemed to be the biggest challenge. So I went back and forth with him on a lot on that, and then the artwork, they almost got it the first time. Every time I had to go back maybe 2 or 3 times on small details. Otherwise, they really nailed my ideas the way I had envisioned them. But the placement of the story, because it's not like a comic book where you just have a little bubble, put down that woman, that type of crap. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you've got a couple of paragraphs here of information, for each page, as well as, some serious graphics trying to get, the visualization of the story and trying to capture it in one page or 2 pages, if it's an open spread type thing. So that was a bit challenging, because I made mine almost like a comic book where you opened up a page and you got 1 or 2 page spread of all the famous serial killers that had happened in Sacramento area. And
Okay.
so it was
Wow.
that one was the hardest one to do.
Hey, Phil, I'm going to leave. I'm going to come back because I can't hear you and I can't hear Zandine. I can only hear Michael. So I'm going to close out and come back on.
All right,
Okay.
Paul, give it a shot.
All right. And one thing I want to touch on too is about your question about the editing. Is the agreement I had with Selena was she said, I'll make corrections, but if you feel like my corrections don't work, don't do them. I didn't have to do them. And
Right.
so I was able to pick and choose like what I thought, yeah, that doesn't change the context of what I'm saying or anything. And so I was like, okay, cool. And there were times like, I'm a proponent of there's 2 different magics. Like there's magic with a C, which is illusion. And then there's magic with a K, which is natural ancient magic. So when I'm talking about magic and mentioning it, I sometimes put a K, and she's like, no, it's a C. And I said, when I was editing, going, no, I'm leaving it the K. And those people who know what the K in magic stands for will understand. And those that don't, they'll just be like, "Oh, it's a misspelling," and I'm like, "Good, kudos to you if you recognized it." Because I even talked to a friend and I was like, "Yeah, isn't magic with ancient magic with a K?" And they go, "Yes, it is." And so I was like, "Cool, I did it right."
Wow. Paul, can you hear us? I guess.
Well, we can't hear Paul.
Well, that's because I had put him on mute. I didn't want him
Oh.
jumping in the. You got to unmute yourself, Paul. I had you on mute so you didn't jump in the middle of what Michael was saying.
Cool. I'm back on. Yes,
Can you hear me, Paul?
I can
Paul,
hear
can you hear?
everybody. I can hear everybody except Michael. No, I'm just kidding.
You
Hey,
won't be missing much, Paul.
millionaire. Hey, I was gonna say he was talking about his editing, and that the question that I asked you, he and Phil was about, do you edit yourself or do you use any aids? But I could tell in your writing style, Paul, that you do most of your writing. So that's what Michael. But I'm sorry I interrupted you, Michael.
I don't know. I was done.
I got a question, and I guess not just for Michael, but maybe for everybody in here. And two-part question. One, in today's age where it seems like the magic is almost it's almost dead. Kind of like, they say God is dead, or they said that back in the 70s. It seems like magic is dead, or at least that the mystery that childhood magic that I grew up with, it's almost gone. Whether movies have taken it away or science is completely tied to abolish it, the mystery of things, they're slowly taking it away from everything. And so I wonder, with that being said, why does the paranormal still hold an appeal for so many people? I mean, even though there are so many people like the guy you were talking about earlier, Michael, who are just out to disprove everything. As soon as you put anything out there, there are so many people out there jumping all over it. That's fake. That's fake. That's not real. Or it's a light, in the background. It's not a ghost, or it's whatever. They've got an explanation for everything. Why do you think it's still as popular as it is, even though everybody seems to have an explanation for it?
Well, three things. One, when it comes to ghosts, people want to know if the afterlife exists. And so they want some kind of confirmation. UFOs, they want to know that we're not the only people living in the whole universe. There's life out there. And when it comes to cryptids, like this werewolf right here, people want to know if there's animals out there that exist that we're not familiar with. So I think those three things. I mean, it's our curiosity. We want to know if we're the only ones living in the whole universe, if there's an afterlife, and if there are animals still unknown out in the wilderness.
Thank you, Paul. That's you nailed it, and then you disappeared. So
What the hell?
the man of mystery. So
Oh,
come on back. I get the follow up question to that I had. If my brain can hold on to this thought. God, just threw me for a loop, disappearing like that. Was truth in today's world where there just seems to be nothing will satisfy everybody as far as the truth that you seem to come up with. What do you think would satisfy everybody? Whether I think with a UFO, I mean, literally one would have to land on the White House lawn, and even then, some people would be like, yeah, this is a government created airplane or something.
Actually, I can answer that.
Well, they said 1957 weather inversions over the White House. They had a bunch of UFOs flying over the White House on 3 different days, and they try to say it was weather inversion.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, getting a photo of a good. People always say, "Why are the photos blurry? Why can't you get a clear one?" Let me tell you, that's like apparitions. Really getting a clear one. Most times, that light of those lights of those real craft, or even satellites, is so bright that most cameras, unless you have a really good camera, like I was saying before, it's hard to unless that glow is down. You don't even have the lens, or you can see it with the naked eye, and it'll look clear. But so I'm amazed. Some of the cell phones have advanced stackers and processors when some of these expensive cameras don't. So they're trying to merge the two technologies because one doesn't have the zoom or capability to take something so clear far away. But people come up with clear footage. So
Michael, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say to your second question first was about the proof. Is I had a guest on, Brian J. Cano, and he said if you weren't there to see what they experienced, you can't disprove it because you did not witness what they witnessed. And so I think that's where the definition of proof comes in is when you experience it yourself and someone experiences it with you, then you can talk between the two of you. Was it real? Not real? But if I said to you, like the story that I shared earlier about the ball, that, oh, that's ball lightning, you just didn't recognize it because it didn't look like the photo. Well, were you there? No. How do you know that's what it was? And so that's where he was saying, and I agreed with him, that the paranormal community needs to step back and stop trying to disprove everything because we did not witness. If you don't witness something, you can't act as an expert on that experience. And I thought that was a really strong and empowering statement to hear and to share with everyone because that's true. I mean, I can read Paul's book and his experiences and go, yeah, that's real or not real. But I can't act as expert witness against Paul's experiences because I wasn't there. So why would if I'm not willing to do that to him, why would I expect him to turn around and go, well, I'm going to act as expert witness on all of Michael's things and tell you this is bonkers, this was made up, this is the. It's like that's not collaboration, that's not helpful, that's just, in my opinion, ego. And
Yeah.
there's too much ego in the paranormal and in a lot of
Yeah,
areas in this
it wouldn't
world.
hold up in a court of law either. If you think about that, just think about it that way. If you didn't witness something, you can neither prove nor disprove it, even in a legal sense. Your opinion means nothing, right?
Right.
As a- yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome point. We have Brian Cano on here, Paul. Paul can't hear us again.
I'm not sure what's going on.
We're having all sorts of technical difficulties, and we lost Paranormal Soul Brother.
But remind me again what the multi-part question was, because I want to make sure I answer it right.
Well, the first question was why are you in today's world where we seem to have killed off the mystery and
Oh, right.
the magic and God, we're taking away any sense of wonder, completely away from everybody. Why do you think people are still so drawn to the paranormal? That was the first question.
I think the people that are drawn to it are the ones that imagination hasn't been drained out of them. Like, we grow up and we're taught, as a kid, oh, imaginary friends. Well, now we find out that may have been a spirit. How cool is that? And you want to know, so it's like, so there's a knowing that wants to go with that. Was that what I had? Or did I just make this up? Then there's the question of, well, this happened, but I can't explain it. and I'm not sciencey, and so I want to be able to explain it. And if I can explain it to myself, maybe I can explain it to someone else. And so there, I think, is like what my draw is like my dad used to use the term layman's terms, meaning anybody can understand it. And so if I can make something to where everybody understands it, great. And that is a gift I can give to the paranormal community. To whereas if I sit there and say, oh, well, because I use this type of camera with this type of lens at this magnification with it, people get lost in the details. That's something my mom tells me all the time is you lost me in the details. And so I think what draws people to it is the wanting to know themselves and be able to relate to others. And I think, Paul, you might agree with this too, is the reason the paranormal is surviving the way it is in ufology is we never had a voice. We were always put down. And so now we have a voice, we have a floor. We're not giving it up. We're not saying to society, oh, you're right. You know, everything we believed was wrong. So we're going to shove it back under the carpet. No, we're sitting there saying, this is our experience. Prove us wrong.
But Michael, if you at one time I was able to turn on the TV and there's all these different ghost hunting shows. Now you don't see them. They're gone. And the only thing left is Ghost Adventures. And everybody makes fun of Ghost Adventures because a lot of their evidence, and I've worked with Ghost Adventures, is faked and everything else. So um, the only time we got this voice going on, it seems like the paranormal groups that go on YouTube, because it's just not on TV. You don't see portals to hell or anything like that anymore. It's
I think
gone.
it's going to come back. I think it's going to come back. I think what you're seeing is taste change,
I can't hear Phil.
okay. Well, Paul, I think you need a new computer. But I'll answer your question anyway. Is I think just like fads come and go, things are popular, and then they kind of lose their sizzle for a little bit, but then all of a sudden they come back when another generation discovers it. And so now might be a time period where people have had enough of it. There was an oversaturation. Give it another 5, 10 years, all of a sudden it'll come back. There'll be a new generation that discovers it, plugs into it, and boom, you'll see those shows come back again with a whole nother generation.
Well, and I think the market got oversaturated with all the shows. And so people did, like, they got to their favorites and then they were like, nope, I'm not going to watch anymore. I'm tired of seeing the same thing on every show, just different players. And so now I think they're all kind of stepping aside, like Destination Fear lost their TV. They're on YouTube now as Project Fear, and they're doing stuff differently. And they said, we're not locked by the studio and what the producers want. So now we're able to do what we want to do. And so I think that's where a lot of the shows went, is they wanted to do what they wanted to do the way they know how to do it, and wanted to leave a better mark than being on, like Paul was saying, the shows that, they're known for faking or entertainment purposes, and wanted to make it more educational. And another point that just came to my mind, Phil, about why ufology and paranormal is staying in the forefront is people are now starting to talk about like aliens. Well, aliens are unexplained. Who else but paranormal investigators could you sit there and go, hey, maybe they know something I don't know about this, and maybe they'll talk about it. And so, by the fact of the paranormal investigators who are going into like cryptids or other, aspects other than, is this house haunted? Is this building haunted? Are the ones you're seeing that more people are getting behind because they cover more topics that are more relevant today instead of being, okay, so we have this spirit who's in this building, and the next team that comes, that's the next show, goes, oh yeah, we're meeting this spirit who, has been known to do this, and here we are getting the same thing, and it's like, well, where's the relevance?
Hey, Michael, that's why I like to watch Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. You got real scientists, real type of evidence. You watch Ghost Adventures, and Zach's always being possessed. I mean, almost every episode possessed. I just don't,
And
you know. I mean, I've been to a lot of the locations where he has. I never got possessed. I don't understand how he's getting possessed on every single episode.
Maybe he was
Well,
never baptized.
yeah. And one of the things that it's like, I'll joke about with the Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, like I watched it tonight, one of the episodes, because I'm behind catching up, was Travis was shooting a rocket, and I was laughing with somebody one day and going, we could make a drinking game of Skinwalker Ranch by how many times Travis says, let's shoot a rocket off. Let's put a rocket out there. But at
Yeah,
the
it
same
gets
time,
bigger and bigger. Yeah, it gets bigger and bigger rockets. But
the
he-
science is there. And I do appreciate, I was saying, yeah, I appreciate you're seeing the evidence they're getting. They're showing you what they're getting, how they're getting it. It's not like the Bigelow days where they're like, oh yeah, something's happening over here. We did this test and here's this paper that says we don't know what's going on, but there's something unexplained happening. And you're like, well, what?
There's something in the mesa.
but
There is.
Michael, Michael, and the real thing about Skinwalker Ranch, though, I mean, anybody that followed it like since the time of Art Bell, like in the '90s, like the original owners that had it, there's a lot more compelling stuff that they still not even begin to, document. But that being said, they might not live to document it because those radiation out there, that it's some serious stuff off camera. Travis has had some bouts with cancer and stuff. They're taking heavy doses, so that's a sacrifice they're making to get that data too.
No, I respect that, and I enjoy the show because what they're finding with where they're at, they're showing you, like, the material that they found, the green goo. It's like you could say, oh, we found green goo, and in your mind you're gonna think, oh, like that slime stuff from the 80s that we used to play with or something, and no, it was like little pebbles.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I see it, I know what they're saying, okay, I can follow along. And do we get the answers? No. Does it get a little repetitive hearing, everything they're doing? Yeah, but I get why. Because they're wanting people to understand. When they come out with the answer of what it is, you look at everything that went out and led up to that point and going, there's no way you can refute it.
Good point.
Michael, I've actually did an investigation at Skinwalker Ranch. I didn't go to the actual ranch, but I was in Utah Valley, which is where the ranch is. And also too, Blind Frog Ranch is also there too. I took two of my investigators. There was a heavy storm that hit, and the sky opened up a little bit, and this ball lightning, when we were talking about ball lightning, I actually saw ball lightning, and as it hit the ground, it blew up into sparks. We also too heard a strange screeching sound. And I used to work at California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I don't recognize that sound. Um, the storm was super heavy. We were putting up the tent. I fell in the mud 1,000 times over. The next day, one of my investigators had pneumonia, so we had to go back. We were going to spend 5 days in the valley, and unfortunately, we had to go back because she was deathly sick.
Damn, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a cost to like when you go into energies that are been, like say covered by the land that are now breaking free because of what they're doing. There is a cost that people don't realize that goes along with that. And I think, with boy, his name's escaping me right now. I want to say Thompson, but
You talking about the one that gets his head hurt every time?
yes,
His head's about to explode. Yeah, man. They really do a number on him when he gets by the radiation.
Thomas.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's right.
I mean, I give kudos to him for wanting to know and having that knowledge to explain why what happened to him happened and being there through it all. Because I don't know, if my skull started to swell or the skin separating
Oh,
from
that's
the
it.
skull,
You're not.
it's
You're not
like I'd be
back.
like, I might be done.
So,
Especially the
Michael,
second time.
we're down to
Phil's hero is Dragon.
Mike. Paul probably can't hear me, but we're down to 1 minute. So why don't you tell everybody where we can get your book?
So my book is available on Amazon. If you search for Michael Kopf, you'll find it. When I go on Amazon and type it out on a blank page, it's the first one that comes up. Actually, let me grab the title so I don't say it wrong. It's Awakening My Journey into the Paranormal. It is available on Kindle and paperback and hard copy. So any version that fits your pleasure. I looked into audio. I can't figure out audio, so I'm going to focus right now on getting the next books out and worry about audio later.
Awesome. Thank you for your time tonight, Michael. Really appreciate it. Enjoy
Thank you,
talking to you.
Michael. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for having me back.